It's funny how quickly an office building can go from a bustling hub of activity to feeling like a haunted house after hours. When I first started staying late to finish up projects, I enjoyed the quiet. It was peaceful. But after a while, it wasn't the kind of quiet that brought comfort. Instead, it was the kind that made you check over your shoulder more often than you'd like to admit. It started with small things, little noises you wouldn't think twice about during the day but hit differently when the building's empty. A creak in the ceiling, the hum of the vending machine, maybe the AC kicking on. You hear all of it when you're the only one left typing away at your desk. I didn't mind it at first. I told myself it was just the building settling, or maybe my tired mind playing tricks on me. But as the weeks went on, the noises changed. They weren't random anymore. It wasn't just the occasional click or thump from the heating vents. No, it felt more deliberate. There was this scraping sound, like metal dragging across the floor, faint at first but getting louder the longer I stayed. And then there were the voices, distant and muffled like someone whispering just out of earshot, but I could never make out what they were saying. I'd pause my work, lift my head and listen. Nothing. Dead silence. But the second I went back to my screen, there it was again. It was like a sick joke, and I wasn't in the mood for it. One night, I finally decided I'd had enough. It was around 10 p.m., and I was the last one in the building. At least, I thought I was. I grabbed my stuff and made my way to the elevator, determined to call it a night. But as I walked through the dimly lit hallway, the scraping noise echoed again, much closer this time. My stomach dropped. I stopped, heart pounding, and glanced around. There shouldn't have been anyone else left, except maybe the janitor. That thought gave me a little comfort. Maybe he was just cleaning up, moving equipment or something. That had to be it. As I rounded the corner, I saw him pushing a mop slowly across the floor, his back to me. Just seeing someone else there calmed me down, even though something about the whole situation felt off. The hallway lights flickered, as they always do, but tonight it seemed to set the perfect tone for the weirdness I'd been feeling. I approached him, ready to just say a quick goodnight and be on my way. But as I passed, I noticed something strange. He was smiling. Not the friendly good evening kind of smile, but this eerie, knowing grin that chilled me to my core. He didn't look at me, didn't say a word, just kept mopping with that twisted smirk plastered across his face. I didn't know what to say. The guy always kept to himself, barely a nod whenever we crossed paths. But tonight, he looked like he knew something I didn't, something that he was waiting for me to figure out. It was unsettling, to say the least. I hurried past him, trying to shake off the feeling creeping up my spine. But as soon as I hit the button for the elevator, that scraping noise started again. This time, it wasn't distant. It was right behind me. I froze, every instinct screaming at me not to turn around. I could still hear the janitor's mop swishing across the floor, but it didn't make sense. How could there be two sounds happening at once? I dared to look over my shoulder, and what I saw will stay with me forever. The janitor was still there, mop in hand, but his back was turned to me. And the scraping noise? It was coming from something or someone further down the hall, just beyond the reach of the dim lights. I couldn't see it clearly, but I caught the glint of metal. And worse, the janitor. He stopped mopping, just standing there with that same eerie smile, like he knew what was about to happen. That's when I bolted for the stairs. I didn't care how many flights I had to take down. I wasn't about to wait for that elevator with whatever was lurking behind me. My heart felt like it was about to burst as I flew down the stairs, practically leaping from one landing to the next. I haven't stayed late at the office since that night. I still hear the noises in my head sometimes, especially when I'm alone in a quiet room. Part of me wonders if I imagined the whole thing, if my brain, exhausted and stressed, just conjured up something out of nothing. But the janitor's face, that smile, I know what I saw. The next day, I tried to ask around about the janitor, see if anyone had noticed anything strange. I found out he hadn't shown up for work that day or any day since. Working the night shift was supposed to be easy, quiet, isolated, and no one to bother you. That's why I took the job in the first place. It was perfect for someone who preferred working alone, especially since the building emptied out by 6 p.m., leaving me in peace for the rest of the night. Or at least, that's how it was supposed to be. At first, the janitor didn't really bother me. He would show up to clean in the early hours of the night around 10 or 11 p.m. We'd nod to each other, exchange the typical pleasantries, and then go about our business. But after a while, something started to feel off. It wasn't just that I kept seeing him wherever I went, but that he seemed to always show up just a little too soon after I moved to a different part of the building. One night, I was down in the basement storage room, organizing some files. It was a remote part of the building, and no one ever went down there. I hadn't been there for more than 5 minutes when I heard the telltale sound of the janitor's cart squeaking around the corner. I brushed it off as a coincidence. After all, he was just doing his job. But then it happened again the next night, and the night after that. No matter where I went, he seemed to show up. At first I thought I was just being paranoid. Maybe I was imagining it. But the more I tried to dismiss it, the more unsettled I became. It wasn't like he was doing anything wrong. He was just there, always a few steps behind me, too close, too often. I tried to test it out. One night, I made a point of moving to different parts of the building, trying to be unpredictable. I went from the basement to the break room, then up to the 4th floor to file some paperwork, then down to the loading dock. Each time, within minutes, there he was, mopping, sweeping, or just standing nearby like he knew exactly where I'd be. The worst part was that he never acknowledged it. He just kept cleaning, as if it was the most natural thing in the world to follow someone around like a shadow. That's when the real paranoia set in. I started studying the security cameras, telling myself I was just being cautious. The building had cameras in every hallway, and I had access to the feeds. Maybe I could catch a pattern, something that would explain why I kept running into him. What I found was worse than anything I could have imagined. As I watched the footage, I realized that the janitor wasn't just showing up randomly. He was tracking me. Every time I moved to a new location, he'd check the cameras first, watching me through the security system before making his way to wherever I was. Sometimes, he'd linger on the screen for a while, just staring at me working. And it wasn't just a one-time thing. He had been doing it for weeks, methodically watching me, following my every move. A chill ran down my spine, as I realized just how deliberate it all was. I wasn't imagining things. He was always a few steps behind because he knew exactly where I was going, and I had no idea why. I started avoiding him after that, making sure to be in parts of the building I knew he wasn't scheduled to clean. But even then, I felt like I was being watched. Every shadow seemed darker. Every creak in the building felt more menacing. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone, even when the security feeds showed nothing unusual. Finally, one night I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I confronted him. It was late, around midnight, and I was in the break room, pretending to read through some reports while watching the security feeds on my phone. Sure enough, there he was, watching me on the cameras before heading toward the break room. My heart pounded as I heard his cart squeak down the hallway. I stood up as he entered the room, trying to steady my voice. "Why do you keep following me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he just looked at me, his face blank, as if he had no idea what I was talking about. Then he shrugged. "I'm just doing my job," he said, his tone casual, like we were talking about the weather. "Don't lie to me," I snapped, my frustration boiling over. "I've seen the footage. I know you've been watching me through the cameras." His expression didn't change. He just stared at me, unblinking, before shaking his head. "I don't know what you're talking about." I didn't know what to say. It was like talking to a brick wall. He wasn't denying it, but he wasn't admitting to it either. He just kept that blank, emotionless stare, like he was waiting for me to back down. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but instead, I just turned and left the room, my heart racing. I could feel his eyes on me as I walked away, and for the first time in my life, I was truly scared of what someone might do. The worst part? I never caught him again. After that night, he stopped showing up on the security feeds. I didn't see him in the building anymore, but the paranoia never went away. I always felt like he was still watching somewhere, just out of sight. I quit the night shift a week later. I couldn't do it anymore. Even now, I can't shake the feeling that he's still out there, tracking someone else's movements, waiting for the right moment to appear again. I've always been the curious type, and working late shifts at the office only fueled that curiosity. The building I work in is old, with long, dimly lit hallways and countless rooms. Most of them were accessible to employees, but there were a few tucked away in corners of the building that were always locked. Rooms that only the janitor seemed to have access to. Every time I passed by those doors during my night shifts, I'd glance at them, wondering what was behind them. I knew I shouldn't care. It was probably just storage for cleaning supplies or old furniture. But something about the secrecy gnawed at me. Why did only the janitor have the keys? And why did he always look so uneasy whenever someone mentioned those rooms? One night I decided to find out. It was past midnight, and the office was completely deserted. The janitor had just finished mopping the break room, and as usual disappeared down the hallway where the locked rooms were. I waited a few minutes, making sure he was far enough away before I made my move. I walked down to the end of the hallway where the last door stood. The janitor's cart was parked outside, but there was no sign of him. I quickly rifled through the cleaning supplies on his cart, my heart pounding in my chest. After what felt like an eternity, I found what I was looking for, a key ring with several keys dangling from it. I glanced around one last time, making sure the coast was clear, then slipped the key into the lock. It clicked open with a soft thud, and I pushed the door open, stepping inside. The room was dark, save for a faint sliver of light coming from the hallway behind me. My hand fumbled for a light switch on the wall, and when the fluorescent lights flickered to life, I froze. It wasn't just a storage room. Far from it. The walls were covered in photos. Photos of people I worked with, my coworkers, supervisors, even some of the interns. They were all candid shots, taken when none of us knew we were being watched. There were photos of people sitting at their desks eating lunch in the break room, even walking to their cars in the parking lot. It felt wrong, seeing their lives laid out on the walls like some kind of twisted gallery. But that wasn't all. On a table in the corner were personal items, watches, sunglasses, keychains, things I had seen people looking for around the office, things that people thought they had lost. My blood ran cold when I spotted something that made my stomach drop, my scarf. The one I had lost months ago and never thought much about. I had looked everywhere for it, and now, here it was, sitting on a table in this dark, hidden room. My mind raced. The janitor had been collecting these items, these photos, for God knows how long. He had been watching us, studying us, maybe even stalking us. I felt a wave of nausea as the gravity of the situation hit me. I wasn't supposed to be here. I wasn't supposed to see this. And that's when I heard it. The door behind me creaked open. Slowly, deliberately. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. I could feel his eyes on me. Those cold, calculating eyes. The janitor stood in the doorway, his silhouette framed by the dim light from the hallway. He didn't say a word. He just stared, silently, watching me with the same intensity I'd seen in his photos. My heart was racing, my hands trembling. I was caught. There was no way to explain this, no way to pretend I hadn't seen everything. For what felt like an eternity, we stood there, locked in a silent standoff. My mind screamed at me to move, to run, but my legs were frozen in place. Every instinct I had was telling me that I was in danger. Finally, after what seemed like forever, he took a slow step forward. Then another. His footsteps were heavy, deliberate, as if he was savoring each moment. He was blocking the only exit, and I knew I had to act fast before he cornered me completely. With a burst of adrenaline, I shoved past him, knocking over his cart in the process. Cleaning supplies scattered across the floor, but I didn't stop. I sprinted down the hallway, my heart hammering in my chest as I raced for the nearest exit. Behind me, I heard his footsteps quicken, and the sound of him calling after me, his voice low and unsettling. I didn't stop running until I was outside, gasping for breath as I fumbled for my phone. I dialed the police, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone to my ear. When the officers arrived, I told them everything about the room, the photos, the personal items. But when they searched the building, the room was empty, completely bare. No photos, no personal items, nothing. The janitor was gone too. They questioned him, but he denied everything. Said I must have imagined it, that I had been working too many night shifts. They chalked it up to stress, to exhaustion. But I know what I saw. I know what he had been doing. Working late at the office wasn't something I minded. In fact, I enjoyed the quiet hours when everyone else had gone home. It gave me time to focus without the constant buzz of conversations or ringing phones. But recently, something had been unsettling me about these late nights. And it all started with the janitor. At first, I didn't think much of it. He was just the guy cleaning up after hours, mopping the floors and emptying the trash bins. But over time, I began to notice something strange. He always seemed to be nearby, closer than necessary. It started small, like him glancing in my direction while I worked. He never smiled or said much, just kept his eyes on me a little longer than felt comfortable. I shrugged it off, figuring it was just the nature of working in the same space. But then, things escalated. One evening, after a long day, I went to the restroom before heading home. As I walked out, there he was, standing just outside the door, mop in hand, staring at me. I paused, startled by how close he was. "Long day?" he asked, his voice low. "Yeah," I mumbled, brushing past him. That's when I noticed he wasn't cleaning anywhere near the restroom. His cart was parked down the hall, far from where he was standing. Why had he been waiting right outside the door? I didn't dwell on it, but as the days went by, the same pattern emerged. He'd always be around, just a little too close, watching me work from a distance, or standing in odd places like the parking lot after everyone had left. I told myself it was a coincidence, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. One night, as I was packing up to leave, he struck up a conversation, something he rarely did. "You work late a lot," he said, leaning against the doorframe of my office. "Must be tough, being here alone." I glanced at him, uncomfortable with the way he was standing, blocking the exit. "Yeah, I guess. Just trying to get things done." He didn't move. "I see you leave around the same time every night. You should be careful. You never know who's watching." That comment sent a shiver down my spine. There was something in his tone, something that felt more like a warning than casual conversation. I forced a smile and grabbed my bag, squeezing past him without another word. As I walked to my car, I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see him following me. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about what he'd said. The way he watched me. The way he always seemed to be there. I started questioning every little interaction, every glance, every time he lingered nearby. Was I overreacting? Or was there something more to this? Then it got worse. One evening, I found a note on my desk when I returned from a break. It was simple, just a few words scribbled on a piece of paper. "Nice lunch. Hope you enjoyed it." I looked around, confused. There was no one else in the office except me and the janitor. I hadn't told anyone what I'd eaten, and the break room was down the hall, far from where he usually cleaned. My stomach churned with unease. How did he know? Had he been watching me? I shoved the note into my bag and left the office in a hurry, my heart pounding the whole way to my car. But when I reached the parking lot, my blood ran cold. He was there, leaning against my car, arms crossed, with that same slow, unsettling smile creeping across his face. His eyes met mine, and for a moment neither of us said anything. The silence stretched on, thick and heavy, until finally, he spoke. "You never know who's watching." I froze, his words echoing in my head. My instincts screamed at me to get out of there, but I didn't want to seem afraid. Keeping my face neutral, I walked toward my car, my hands gripping my keys so tightly they left marks on my palms. "What do you want?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just saying hi," he replied casually, stepping away from my car. "You know, you're the only one here so late most nights. It's good to have company." I didn't respond, just unlocked my car and got inside as quickly as I could. My heart raced as I started the engine and pulled out of the lot, watching him in the rearview mirror. He stood there, watching me drive away, his smile never faltering. After that night, I started leaving work earlier. I didn't want to be alone in the office with him anymore, didn't want to risk another encounter like that. But even during the day, I could feel his eyes on me. Every time I passed him in the hallway, I could sense him watching. The final straw came a week later. I arrived at work one morning to find another note on my desk. This one was more direct. "You should lock your doors at night." My heart pounded as I read it, my mind racing with all the possibilities. How did he know where I lived? Had he been watching me outside of work? I couldn't take it anymore. I went to HR, reported everything, the notes, the comments, the way he'd been watching me, but they brushed it off, saying it was probably just a misunderstanding. They promised to look into it, but I knew nothing would change. That night I drove home with the windows up and the doors locked, glancing in the rearview mirror the whole way. Every shadow, every car behind me felt like him, lurking, watching. I knew he was still out there, still keeping track of my every move. And no matter what I did, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was never truly alone. When I first started my internship, I was excited to prove myself, eager to learn the ropes. The company was reputable, and the office had a professional atmosphere, at least during the day. It wasn't until I began staying late, trying to catch up on projects, that things started to feel off. It began innocently enough. A pen missing here, a notebook gone there. I didn't think much of it at first. Interns are always running around the office, so it was easy to assume I misplaced something or someone else borrowed it. But then my things started reappearing in strange places. The first real sign that something was wrong came when I found my phone charger tucked inside one of the filing cabinets in the supply room. I had no idea how it ended up there, but it wasn't until I uncoiled the charger that I saw it. Tucked inside was a small piece of paper with the words, "You're always so focused, aren't you?" scrawled in messy handwriting. My stomach dropped. Who would leave me a note like this? I brushed it off as a prank, probably from one of the other interns. But the next day, I found my keychain hidden behind the copier, with another note inside my coat pocket. This one read, "How's the coffee today?" The weird part? I'd just been in the break room minutes before making myself a cup. It was unsettling, but I still didn't think much of it, until I reviewed the footage from the desk camera I'd set up as a security precaution. I had always been paranoid about leaving my personal belongings at the office, so I thought the camera would help keep things safe. But what I saw that night made my skin crawl. The janitor. He was going through my desk, opening drawers, and carefully placing something inside. He wasn't hurried or worried about being caught. In fact, he seemed calm, almost comfortable, like this was something he'd done many times before. I felt sick watching it. He was in my space, rifling through my things, leaving those creepy notes. But why? What did he want? The next day, I confronted him. I couldn't stay silent any longer. I caught him when he was cleaning near my desk, standing there with his mop, his face expressionless. "Why are you going through my stuff?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked at me, his eyes dull, and for a second I thought he might deny it. But instead he just shrugged. "You've got interesting things," he said, as if that explained everything. "Leave my things alone," I snapped, my voice shaking. He smiled. It was the first time I'd seen him smile, and it was far from reassuring. "You don't like the notes?" he asked, still watching me with that unsettling expression. I didn't answer. I just walked away, trying to shake off the fear building inside me. But after that confrontation, things got worse. The notes didn't stop. They escalated. The next one was tucked into my coat pocket again, but this time it was different. It wasn't playful or teasing. It simply said, "I know where you park." My hands trembled as I read it. How did he know where I parked? Was he following me outside the office now? I tried to act normal, but I started checking my surroundings constantly, especially in the parking lot. Every time I left the building, I felt his eyes on me. The fear began to gnaw at me, making it hard to focus on anything else. One evening, after staying late again, I made my way to my car, just wanting to go home. But as I reached for the door handle, I noticed something out of place. A single piece of paper was wedged under the windshield wiper. My heart raced as I pulled it out and read the words, "Nice car. Looks even better from the inside." I froze. I rushed to open the door, and sure enough, my car had been rifled through. My glove compartment was open, papers scattered across the seats. And in the center console, another note. "It's comfy in here." The panic hit me hard then. He wasn't just going through my things at work. He had been in my car, my personal space. What else did he know? Had he been to my apartment? I couldn't stay silent any longer. I went to HR, but they brushed it off, saying it was probably just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? How could they be so dismissive? That night I couldn't sleep. Every little noise made me jump. I double-checked the locks on my doors, pulled the blinds tight, and kept my phone by my side, ready to call for help if I heard anything suspicious. The next morning, as I pulled into the office parking lot, I felt a familiar sense of dread. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching me. Sure enough, as I walked into the building, there he was, mopping the lobby floor. He looked up, gave me that same unsettling smile, and said, "Good morning." I didn't respond. I couldn't. The fear had rooted itself so deep in me that I couldn't bring myself to say anything. The final note came a few days later. I found it in my desk drawer, tucked inside my notebook. It simply read, "I've been inside your home." I felt the blood drain from my face. How? How did he get inside? I checked my locks every night. There was no way. But the note, it was so specific, so confident. He wasn't just messing with me. He wanted me to know. That was the last straw. I packed up my things, handed in my resignation, and left that office for good. I didn't care about the internship anymore. I didn't care about the lost opportunities. I just wanted to feel safe again.